All right, good afternoon. I'm Teresa Tomlinson, the proud chairwoman of the Briar College Board of Directors, and we're so thrilled to have you here at what we think is the very first Briar College Town Hall ever. And so welcome. We really appreciate your time this afternoon, taking time out of your busy day. We are going to try to keep this event to the 90-minute time frame that was handed out on all the flyers. Just to tell you a little bit about what our agenda will be today, so you can start thinking of your questions, and then we're going to make some quick introductions and statements. It'll last 90 minutes. We'll make some introductory remarks, and really this is your show. This is for you. So the questions, the microphone will be going to you, and I suspect we're going to have about 75 minutes of nothing but questions and answers. And so if it's like traditional town halls, we will probably only be getting going at 75 minutes of open mic. But we trust you to keep the conversation going and let us know what's on your mind. We've got all the right folks in the room to either answer your questions here today or certainly take back your thoughts and issues and get information to you quickly if we can't answer them today. I want to, of course, introduce President Phil Stone, who's going to be speaking here in a moment and giving you a quick update. I want to welcome, we have elected officials in the room, representatives of elected officials, appointed officials. If you're an appointed or elected official or representing an elected official, please stand up if you would. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming. After what we've been through this last year, I think we all recognized how intertwined we are. The relationships that perhaps we took for granted and didn't even realize how interlaced we were. And so we appreciate you all being here. We have, of course, faculty members, retired faculty members. We have citizens from the community. We have students. We have Katie Craig here, who's the president of the Student Government Association. Katie, please stand up. Yes. We have the chair of our faculty executive committee, Linda Fink, is here. Linda? Thank you. We also have the co-chairs of our Alumni Alliance, Sarah Van Rosenberg and Deborah Elkins. Could you please stand up? Thank you. We want to welcome the media who's here. We are being live streamed across the nation. We have alumni and stakeholders across the country who are tuning in right now to witness this, to be a part of this great, great community that we all fought so hard to make sure would continue indefinitely into the future. And we want to welcome them as well and thank our media partners for all that they did to keep the story alive and to convey our story during some trying months and times, and also to help us celebrate our victory. I want to recognize our board members who are here this weekend working hard, trying to get the governance right, trying to get the foundation of a great vision for this college going forward. And so let me, if you would, please raise your hand or stand as I call your name. We have Andrew Benjamin of Leesburg, Virginia, proud parent and board member. Thank you for being here. We have Jax Bullitt from Ashburn, Virginia, recent graduate. Leah Bousquet from Santa Monica, California. Alice Dixon from Richmond, Virginia. Butch Drake cannot be with us today for this event, but he is watching live stream. We have Mimi Foss from New York, New York. Kelly Fitzpatrick from Birmingham, Alabama. Carol Fowler, Austin, Texas. Martha Fruhoff, Charlottesville, Virginia. Ben Howerton, Richmond, Virginia. General Charles Krulak, Birmingham, Alabama, who's not with us but is watching live stream. Hello, General. Kenton McCartney from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Rocky Query, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Frank Roach, Richmond, Virginia. Mason Rummel, Louisville, Kentucky. Allie Simon, Irving, Texas. She's not with us, but she is watching live stream. We have Marcia Tom Cayley from Lynchburg, Virginia. Georgine Vero, Santa Barbara, California. Cece Valentine, Phoenix, Arizona. Elle Warner, Easton, Pennsylvania. And Marsha Lynn Alsop from Atlanta, Georgia. I think you can see that we've got the United States covered geographically here, but we do have great representation on the board. They're certainly devoted to this institution. I thank them for their service. And again, thank you for being here. We will all be dutifully taking notes of your concerns and interests today. And again, this is just the first of what we think is going to be a tradition of holding these types of forums. With that, I'm not going to belabor and begin speechifying because, again, this is your time. So I'm going to turn it over to President Phil Stone, who I have the great honor and privilege of working with. We're so very fortunate to have his leadership. He wants to introduce some senior staff to you and make some opening comments. President Stone.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. All of you remember what I've called the hand grenade speech when Teresa spoke at commencement to make it clear that this place was not going anywhere, that we were going to stay open. And so Teresa continues to provide extraordinary leadership by chairing the board and the many things she does for the college. I also want to say thank you to my colleagues on the board. They've been working so hard yesterday in committees, today in board meetings, started at the meeting itself at 8 o'clock this morning, and had a lecture during lunch, and I mean, it's just been very intense. But they also wanted an opportunity to meet you and to hear from you, and that's why the town hall meeting, at the end of the day, we just felt like we really wanted to hear from all of you and give you an opportunity to ask questions. Nothing's off limits. We may not be able to answer it. If we can't, we'll tell you that, but nothing is going to be off limits. I want to introduce the senior staff. These are the people who make up the President's Council of the college. Some of you, even who live in the community, may not be aware exactly who is in the leadership positions. There are other staff people here, but I'll introduce the President's Council members. And let me just ask you to stand when I call your name, and I'll let everybody be called out before I ask for you to acknowledge them. Let's start with Pam DeWeese, Academic Dean. Tom Connors, Vice President for Finance and Treasurer. Kelly Kraftmeyer, Dean of Student Life. Mary Pope Hudson is Vice President for Alumni Affairs and Development. Stephen Nape is Vice President for Enrollment. Nancy Ellen Keene, Vice President of Administration and General Counsel. This is the administrative team that helps provide leadership for the school. Thank you very much for what you do. And just so you might identify that there are others in the room who do serve here, those of you in the administrative staff, support staff or administrative staff, would you stand so people could just see you where you are and if they want to speak to you or talk to you later? Okay, good. Thank you. You know, it's really hard to believe it's only been about 7 months. I feel like it's been 10 years, don't you? I mean, we've been trying to do so much in such a short period of time. What really impresses me is the fact that this is not just a single miracle of the alumni of this college saving an institution. We've had a series of miracles. The litigation, most people thought couldn't possibly work, and it did, and it drove the case to a settlement that turned the governance over, a miracle. And then there was the investment that so many of you made in saying, I know intellectually, I probably ought to bail out, but I love this place. And I just cannot believe it is going to close, and I'm going to stick it out. I am going to invest in my school. I'm going to continue working here. I'll take my chances. Another miracle that so many of you did that. And then alumni, you're not supposed to be able to save your college. What were you thinking? You weren't even supposed to be able to raise money. You raised $28 million in 100 days. Incredible stuff. What a miracle. There's just no precedent for it, really. I mean, I know there are some other schools that got salvaged, as they were closing, but nothing like this one. where you not only saved it to say, okay, we'll do something else with it. It'll be a vocational school, or it'll be something. At least it'll be open. No, you said it's going to be saved as Sweetbriar. This is Sweetbriar College, and nobody's taking our college away from us. So those of you who were faculty and staff and stayed invested in your school and took the risk, these wonderful students who should have known better than to come back to a school that said it was closing, but said, no, this is my school. Nobody pushes me out of my school. And they had to go to some extraordinary efforts in many cases to leave the schools they'd been pressed into because we weren't providing a place for them, they thought, to come back to their college. This will always be a group of heroines, in my judgment, for those of you who were willing to take that risk. And what a year it's been. When we opened August 25th, you've heard me describe the atmosphere at our academic assembly as electric. I think faculty, staff, students all felt that way. It was just so sky high. And it's continued. Frankly, with all the miracles that we were already blessed with, we were probably due to stub our toe or to have a few really serious disappointments along the way. So many of us were new. I didn't know anybody. As president, no telling how many times people have had to cover for me because I just don't know what I'm doing. But, for example, when I got here and didn't know anybody, and I didn't have a dean because the administration group was leaving, I was able to turn to people like Linda and her faculty executive committee, and they volunteered, in fact, to say, here are the faculty who's staying, here's who's leaving, and here are some adjuncts that could help plug the holes. And it was that way across the board. People doing everything they could think of to make sure we opened and we were strong and stable. The alumni, I thought another miracle was, frankly, when you came in for the work days, and I thought these dozens of women coming to the campus, what a mess we were going to have here. Nobody in charge. Will the paint be correct? Will the skills be the ones we need for this or that? Wow, what a job you guys did of just organizing yourselves, and I've called it like General Patton's Army, but I think he would actually be envious. I mean, the way you organized. And then I heard the Alumni Alliance Council report to the board today, and there's another example. It's not like organizing a local book club. I mean, they've organized like an IPO company or a new software company in Silicon Valley. They've got it all laid out. They know what they're doing, and they're really good at it. I'm trying to keep up. And another miracle because of the skills and the passion and the energies you're all bringing to this table. And the last thing the administration and the board want to do is to stifle or inhibit that energy. There are so many hours in a day, and I'm conscious of that, believe me, because there have been some really hard, long days, a lot of trips on the road. And so we just can't do everything that we want to do as quickly as we want to do it. But we do want the ideas, we do want the expressions of interest and help, and we want to make better disclosure. One of the things I'm conscious of is that the alumni in particular, but all of you are so anxious to know things about the college that we can't just say, well, other colleges generally would not have to do this or that. We will need to respond to that by saying, because you're so interested, and we're glad you're so interested, we need to volunteer more information to you, not thinking that in some colleges that wouldn't be of great interest and it could be done in a quarterly report or an annual magazine. You want it now. I mean, you want to know what's going on, what's being planned, what's been thought about. And so we're committed to trying to make a concerted effort, whether it's an every Monday morning report or something like this, to do something to put information out there of things we're working on, what I'm doing, where we're going, what the plans are, and all of that. The board is committed to doing things like putting the bylaws on the web page, to post them publicly as soon as the board processes them and approves them. We're going to be thinking of everything we can do that is right to be transparent and be open, and that's our commitment to you. So I just want to say that this is what we're working on, and then we'll hope turn to their questions. We're saying that our mantra is get the students and get the money. The damage, sadly, the damage that we are spending so much of our time on right now is not the damage of the demographics that were described as being the cause for closing. We can handle that, and we flat out got that. That is, we don't have enough students and that kind of thing. The damage was done by the attempt to close. That's the hole that's been dug that we're trying to get out of. And so please be patient with us as we try to get out of that hole. We estimate, and I believe that is a good estimate, that maybe $30 to $50 million of economic damage was done by the closing. If you take a small freshman class, forfeited income, all the things that were done. Imagine the amount of time it takes to get out of the college. So if people thought we were fragile a year ago, it didn't help any to kick us with that kind of damage. So, but we're doing it. You're doing it. And what we're doing then is trying to get those students in. We want to get up to about 800 students. We want to do that quickly because we can accommodate that many students on the campus without any major construction. So it's a nice way for us to grow and develop. We'll be a more international community. We want to bring in international students because we're in this lovely, large campus. We don't ever want to become insulated and think, well, this is our whole world right here on this one campus. We need to know what's going on in the world. So we want to be stimulated by interaction with other communities and other people. And we want to make sure that we are a robust, energetic, strong college. That's what we want to do. And then we want to make sure we get the money to do it. Right now, while the student enrollment is low because of the closing effort, we have a big gap to cover. And so what we're really trying to do is urge you to continue your contributions and your giving, not because we say the house is on fire and we can't pay the light bill. We actually are doing really well right now in terms of our use of cash and everything. But Mary Pope Hudson, introduced to you earlier, spearheaded the effort by the Saving Sweetbriar Group to raise a lot of money, along with other alumni who participated in that, to raise the pledge amount I mentioned earlier. And she's now vice president here, and she took me on the road, I think our first week here, 8 straight days to try to raise money out in the West Coast and everything. She's serious about raising money. And so we are going to raise money. This is the time to help the college, because while we're covering the gap of the low enrollment, that's when we need the help the most, because we plan to get strong enough and big enough that we don't have to keep coming back to the alumni and saying you have to give heroically again. This is the time for it. So with that, I want to see if Teresa's ready to turn to questions, and thank you again for your interest and for your willingness to come today.
Thank you, President Stone. I'll just make a couple of quick comments. There will always be a market for extraordinarily capable women leaders, and that is the product that Sweetbriar College turns out. And that is why Sweetbriar College has never been more relevant than it is right now today. So we have the structure and the product that should be extremely marketable to young women around the country, and we are working as a board, as an administration, to pull together the parts: responsible audited financial statements, a clean audit, a responsible budget going forward. All of those things are very intensive exercises, much more than they would have been if simply you had come into an ongoing concern that had been invested in its perpetuity instead of in its closing. So there's been a lot of reversal of energy and direction that the board has been engaged in, and we can talk a bit about that. If you have a question, you can line up here behind this microphone or simply raise your hand, and we have folks that will bring a microphone to you. So yes, we've got one over here near the window, and then afterwards this woman here in the front on the second row. So yes. Right here. And if you would just state your name and then your question. Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Michelle Badger, class 2006, and my question is...
Yeah, it may take a minute to kind of get up. Now try it.
Hi.
Yeah, there you go.
Wonderful. Well, I'm Michelle Badger, class of 2006, and my question is, what are the steps that we're taking or strategies that we're taking to rebrand the college for the 21st century student that we're expecting to come in?
Right, great. Well, again, we have a lot of that reputation, and a lot of that reputation was well demonstrated in the process of taking back the college. I cannot tell you the number of women that, as I went around the country during that process, who came up to me and said, I wish I had gone to Sweetbriar College. And we all had young women in our community who came up to us and said, wow, you go to Sweetbriar College. And so we're hearing that in the efforts that we're making in admissions right now as we travel around going to college fairs, how intrigued not just the high school counselors are, but the young students. So I think the first part is we have a solid brand, and our alumni, who are so accomplished and so capable, represent that brand every day. You see them doubling down on the fact that they're demonstrating proudly now that they're a Sweetbriar College graduate in this significant position, that they're there holding this position in the community or in business because of the education they had and the skills they learned at Sweetbriar College. And I think that's something we weren't quite doing before. So we're exercising our brand in that way that's already existing. And then we're doing some other things too to look at where we are today and where we maybe need to grow and morph in the future. And President Stone, I don't know if you have someone on your staff that'd like to speak to that.
Well, maybe I'll add a word just because I've done the Rolling Stone tour that's taken me to so many cities and about 3,000 alumni, and I get to hear things back in terms of the Q&A and comments about what are you doing? I mean, what is college going to look like? One of the things that I've learned to preach as part of the sermon quickly about Sweetbriar is women's education. Is that going to be a characteristic of Sweetbriar in the future? I've been saying it will be, but that's only because I'm here at the moment. I'm not going to be here so long that I can speak for the next 114 years, 110 maybe. It really is going to be up to the constituents, feeding information back to the board as to what changes about the college, what will characterize it in the future. I fervently believe in liberal arts residential education. And I'm firmly a fan of women's education. I've had to learn that quickly because I was president of a co-ed school before. And so I start with the result. Look at what you did. Look at what the alumni did. What special happened at Sweetbriar that permitted that to happen when it doesn't happen anywhere else? And isn't the unique factor? I mean, you're smarter than most and all that, but isn't the unique factor that you're women? And women bonded in a special way at Sweetbriar. Leadership emerged in a special way at Sweetbriar. And if you were around our students, just take 5 or 6 of students anywhere at random on our campus. I promise you, you're going to encounter leaders. And so one of the themes emerging that I'm hearing is leadership. It is leadership. Sweetbriar is about leadership, liberal arts, women's education, residential campus, all that, the writing programs, all the things that we have. But a fundamental core value is we develop leaders, not because we think everybody has to have such high visibility or be a mayor, but because some people like Teresa and other great alumni have asserted leadership by saying, here's a need, I feel responsible, I'm going to step forward, and I'm going to do something. Or in their careers, I'm going to be the best I can be, and they end up being very high. Or I'm going to serve in this function because I'm needed, and I'm going to go do it. That leadership, I think, is core. But I think before the board, and certainly the administration will take its cue from the board, but the board has any change of values or anything about what Sweetbriar is going to look like, there will be a lot of conversation from the constituents. And so part of what is happening now is I think the board is trying to check in on its own values. What are our core values as we govern? How do we see our governance values? And then I know there's going to be a lot of conversation with the constituency about how do you see Sweetbriar in the future? What is your dream for Sweetbriar? How do you want to see it look? There are people come up to me and say, I don't think it has to be co-ed, single sex. I hope you keep it single sex. But some of you in this audience will probably be thinking, it doesn't have to be. That conversation has to take place. But at least right now, on the road, as your spokesperson, when I do this, I'm preaching women's, liberal arts, residential, education, high quality, with leadership.
Yeah. And the two things I think that are coming out, first of all, this is sort of pre-visioning what we're doing right now. Before we get into that formal visioning phase that a lot of you may be familiar with your particular industry or organizations that you may have been members of, there's a very methodical visioning phase that you go through that usually ends up in a report that's a 10-year plan forward, a path forward, sets out your mission and some new objectives, let's say. So what we're doing right now is sort of pre-visioning because we really are in a rebirth era. And so before we just go off into that visioning process, we want to have some of this. And what's coming out, I would say, are two things in these very early stages: leadership for women and STEAM. That is putting the arts in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. STEM got to be such a buzzword, and the pendulum had swung so far that I actually say often that I think what happened to Sweetbriar was not actually so much about Sweetbriar as it was about higher education. And where is the place for liberal arts in today's world? This sort of vocational, science-oriented world today, where does liberal arts fit into that? Is liberal arts irrelevant? Is it a dinosaur? And I think the battle for Sweetbriar is absolutely not. The pendulum has to swing back to something more balanced, a rethinking of liberal arts in today's world. And so I think you're seeing two things, STEAM and women's leadership. But I tell you, and we're all open. We want to hear everything from everybody. But I got to tell you, going through all this process, the single-sex education component has only thus far been reaffirmed. Thus far. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. My name is Amanda DeColony. I'm class of 68, and I'm speaking for both myself and for Emmy Savage, who also is the class of 68. And we're realizing Sweetbriar's one of its greatest assets is the land and the forests and the possibility for ecological studies. And in this day and time when people are becoming more and more conscious of how modern life is eating up our world, Sweetbriar could do an incredible, huge program to use its forests for conservation and really develop a world-class environmental studies program here. And is there anything being done to investigate conservation easements for the forests so that we don't continue to harvest the trees for short-term use?
Such a great question. In fact, I was getting winks and nods from the lady sitting behind you, who is a big proponent of conservation easements and so forth. Yes, there's tons of conversation about that. You know, one of the many things that was so shocking about the announcement on March 3rd was we had over 32 acres of land, which is this huge asset in so many ways. And we had heard really nothing about maximizing, optimizing that asset. And so, yes, there's a lot of talk, and certainly it'll be a huge component of this visioning process we ultimately get into is how can we optimize all of this land that we have for educational purposes, conservation, perhaps even some agricultural purposes. There may be opportunities for cooperative or partnership easements and leases and things of that nature. And really the possibilities are limitless if you think about it. And I will say this, there are actually firms, not one, not two, 4 or 5 firms that have sort of voluntarily thrown out ideas just because so many people are interested in what happened to Sweetbriar, that they specialize in educational land management. And just to whet our appetite for thought, they've thrown out what other educational institutions have done, and it's been shocking even to me, who I thought I was well versed in that type of subject, the many, many ways you can use land for educational purposes, for income-producing purposes, that doesn't harm the land. And so, yes, we're very much thinking about that. And
What were the Pam say a word about what we're doing academically on
oh,
that?
Pam, okay.
Dean DeWeese has been working on some of the environmental studies program.
We were very fortunate. The very first week I came in, we had a group approach us about giving us a lot of money to help rebuild our environmental sciences program. And we have brought that grant through several different people and faculty member to fruition. So we have $500,000 next year to start with, which will provide some budget relief for faculty lines, but will also provide scholarships. We'll provide some money to develop the idea of our community garden and how students might work with that over the summer. There are a lot of different aspects to it. We're very happy about that. So we have the $500,000, then there's another challenge grant of $500,000, so altogether it could be $1.5 million that will be going into our environmental sciences program. We're very fortunate that Tom O'Halloran, who was with us last year and works on our weather tower out here, he has a grant with Virginia Tech this year, and he'll be back on our staff next year, and we have a search ongoing for a director of the program at an associate professor level. And so we're hoping to bring that to a conclusion this spring. In the meantime, we have wonderful people teaching our students on campus this year who've done a great job with them. So we definitely will be growing in that area very shortly.
Can I add just one quick thing? I have a local business which burned up to almost 3 years ago, and in the interim period, because I wasn't making much money and the insurance company wasn't giving me any, I've been going to farm markets. And the young people and what they are doing on very few acres of land and with really careful practices, and then to see the customers coming in and paying really high prices for clean, organic produce. And, you know, if you're interested, I've got some local people that I can direct you to. There's some kids that are living right almost under the bridge at the James River that have got, they not literally, but they're living in a yurt, and they've got very few acres of land, and they service, I can't tell you how many farm markets.
Fantastic. I tell you, there couldn't be a better time to be a women's college with 3,200 acres than the era that we're living in right now. It's almost, again, serendipity. It happened for a reason somehow and caused us to look at this land anew as such a tremendous resource.
Teresa,
Possibilities
she
are
also
limitless.
asked about the timber.
Oh, yes.
Linda Fink is a great resource for that. Linda, let me hand you this mic.
There's
Oh,
one.
you got one.
Yeah.
Linda, you'd reported to the board yesterday, or one of its committees, about how much of our acreage is in sanctuary. Why don't you say what the sanctuary is, and then how much of it is subject to being forested if we wanted to do it?
So the Buildings and Grounds Committee is very interested in this 3,200 acres. And raise your hand if you were a Buck Edwards colleague, friend, okay? I inherited Buck Edwards' position here when he retired, and he did a lot about this land and cared about it, and I've continued that interest. So the Buildings and Grounds Committee had a discussion about all the ways we're already using the land, and it's great that there's a lot of alumni interest. We really have been using it in our educational programs. We have had conservation protection of some of our land. There have been past questions about timbering that haven't been handled as well as they might have. So I've been impressed working with the Buildings and Grounds Committee this week that it's a very active area of interest, and I'm sure they'll call in expertise of a lot of people. I have a lot more optimism for what we're going to do with the land than I have in some recent years. So.
Thank you, Linda. We do have a really engaged Building and Grounds Committee. All of our committees and board members are very engaged. I saw several hands. Shoot your hand up again. One here, one on the aisle. How about, since Georgine, you're right there? Yeah. And just if you would stand up and state your name and your question.
Hi, is this on? Is this on?
Yeah.
Yes. My name is Leanne White, and I'm an alum from the class of '86 and teaching here in the Department of Economics. I think my question is for President Stone, or somebody on the staff or the academic subcommittee, the academic committee of the board. So this is my first year on faculty. I'm curious as to how the new visioning will align with the communication channels that are set up between the board and the faculty, and how you will hear from the faculty about curriculum development challenges and how that will align with the strategic visioning process.
Yeah. Let me just say, we're actually, and certainly going to turn that over to President Stone, we're actually feeling all that out right now. One thing I think we're trying to be very, very careful of is to make sure we don't just adopt what used to be because it's there and people are used to it and those are the structures, or to adopt what every other school is doing. I mean, we're really trying to take, without belaboring unnecessarily the process, we're really trying to take a fresh look at how we would create these lines of communication today, because we have that opportunity. And was the old way optimal? And in fact, we just had an hour presentation from the Faculty Executive Committee, direct with the board. Every time we've been here, we meet in person with the board. Sometimes it's in more of a social relationship building type setting, and other times it's a very engaging question answer, thought provoking type conversation. So I just want to let you know, as it relates to categories of our greatest stakeholders, which would be our alumni, our students, and our faculty, we are vetting through that still. Not to say we don't have ongoing lines of communication, but before we seek to set anything in stone, we want to make sure we've really looked at what should it be in this era today, given what we've gone through, to really optimize it. And I hope our stakeholders are seeing our earnest effort to have that conversation. President Stone, you want to be more?
Well, I think that's a good answer and complete. I'll add just a word. I do meet regularly with the Faculty Executive Committee and the Dean, so I get good input from the faculty that way. They're the elected leadership of the faculty. I do participate in the faculty meetings. I'm a member and get to go and participate and make reports and can answer questions. Faculty members, I think, have demonstrated already that they feel very comfortable coming to me as just one at a time or 4 or 5 at a time with some ad hoc kind of suggestion or concern, and we talk about it. And so I try to be very accessible. I think I would go back to the fact, and I don't want this to be an excuse very long, I go back to the fact that the first 7 months have been so consumed with putting out fires and the emergency things that had to be done that it was hard to turn to now next. But clearly, that's where we are now. We don't want to spend a lot of time playing in the past. We want to say, okay, that's past. We need to be talking about where are we headed now. And that conversation will have to be very rich. As the chairman says, it'll have to involve all the constituents. But as far as the faculty administration dialogue, it'll be a very open conversation. I have no agenda to bring to the faculty and say it needs to look this way or that. I'm anxious to hear from the faculty, and then the board will get involved in that too.
You know, our vice chair, General Krulak, has a great saying. He says, let's be directed by the stars and not by our wake. And at the same, and we do that. We're looking ahead at where we need to be going. And at the same time, I think we have to look at why what happened to us, you know, where the systems failed. Why were so many people shocked? So many people that felt they were fully engaged in Sweet Briar. How in the world could we have been shocked by this? And did we have the right structures in place to prevent that? Did we have the right kind of full engagement? And so before we just say, which would be actually pretty easy to do, sort of decree we're going to have 5 committees, or we're going to have 2 representatives here and 2 representatives there, and you're going to be able to vote here and you can't vote there, done. Engagement, check. It seems like real, and I consider this, by the way, full engagement. You know, this is serious engagement, and particularly if you do it more than once, if you do it regularly. And the same thing with having the Faculty Executive Committee meet with the board regularly to have these conversations and not only go through conduits or representatives. Somehow that's very empowering. And I think there's something there. Now, how do you put structure around it, and how do you make sure it perpetuates? That's what we're dealing with. But, yes, sir. Here we go. We got it right here.
Make sure it's on. Make a fool of myself.
Well, it just takes, a second to warm up, yeah.
I'm John Ashbrook in the History Department, and I'm glad that you all have a commitment to transparency, since many of the community feel that we were burned last time. But in keeping in that, one of the things that many of us feel needs to be done is to maintain the faculty position on the board, the one that we have. And there's something else, too, that's often overlooked, it seems like, these days. The staff was amazing in the Saving Sweet Briar struggle. And the non-senior staff did so much, and they are actually a real part of this community, the area. They're the natives. There shouldn't be this town-gown division, and I would like to suggest that maybe a position of staff be opened for the board, so that community will have a voice, and there would be even more transparency, because they do so much for what we do here in educating women. So, and I'm hoping that the charge that now that the public knows that transparency is one of the things that the board and the administration is going to do, and inclusion is another one of those important things. I think we should all try to support something like that.
Absolutely.
And thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so very much. And absolutely, the role of the staff did not go unnoticed. I hope everybody feels and knows that, certainly by by this leadership that's here. I want to pose a couple of things to you that we're thinking about. And by the way, no decision has been made. In fact, we haven't even polled the board members as to how they feel about board membership. We'll be discussing our draft of the governance documents tomorrow. And just from what little I've heard, there seems to be many differing views. Let me just pose a few things for you all to think about, because your response to this through Facebook, email, or other type thoughts could be very helpful to us. If in fact you're a staff member or faculty, we'll just use those type of stakeholder representatives, you would have to leave and recuse yourself from discussion and vote if it involved any pecuniary interest whatsoever. So there you are, and to be cynical for a minute, you could say, we have a faculty representative. He's just never allowed to stay and discuss and vote on anything that involves the faculty. He has to leave the room. But we've checked that box off, and you all are fully represented. So shoo with all your ideas. You know, we're trying, because we have a conflicts policy about that pecuniary interest. And with a regular board member, it sort of boils down to, am I trying to sell you some property I own, or trying to buy some property the college owns? But when it's somebody who is employed by, then discussions about pension, discussions about tenure, discussions about race, I mean, you know, it all almost has a direct pecuniary interest. And so, yeah, it's so easy to just say, absolutely, we're going to have a staff member representative on the board, we're going to have such and such representative. And then you have to say, okay, well, do they vote or not? Are they just ex officio? Well, if they're ex officio, then they have to leave when we start talking about the good stuff. If they're a voting member and have a pecuniary interest, they have to leave. So I just want, as we have the conversation, I want us to really get down into what influence is. And that's what, as a stakeholder, that's what you want. You want information and you want influence over decisions that are important to this cooperative we have. And so that's where the discussion is. I suspect it'll be a very interesting discussion tomorrow, because as you saw, we're about equal. I think we have 14 board members that are alumni and 10 that are not, that were not brought up in this community, in this environment, and they come from other boards, service. And so it'll be a very interesting discussion, but other people may have thoughts as you digest that. But what is meaningful engagement? And I'll say something else. There were board members from various constituencies previously. And the two things that I think you have to think about is, I wonder, and I'll speak from the board member that was supposed to be representing my interest, I often thought, well, was she representing me? She had 14,000 people to represent, and some of the alumni were split on this issue, right? So how does one person represent 14,000 people? And also, one person had information that 14,000 people needed to know. And so was that real, meaningful representation? So that, again, that's where we're going for, not just to check off the box and say we did it so everybody's happy with us and doesn't, ask us tough questions, but real meaningful engagement. Because I think we have the opportunity to set a standard that will be board governance and true representation. I fully expect 10 years from now, colleges will be coming here to watch us and ask us how exactly we have arranged things. And so let's take that opportunity. That's all. But excellent question.
Teresa, before
Still
you
looking
move
at it.
on,
Yeah.
he made another reference I think we ought not lose, which is this. He made a reference to the support of the community, the town, and we should say that very openly. One of the reasons we wanted to invite the whole community to this town hall meeting was that Amherst County, the Lynchburg region, could not have been more supportive of Sweet Briar College. And we appreciate you. We really do. And one of the charges I take very seriously, and I know Teresa and the board take very seriously, is that we need to always remember this is a community asset. We are a community resource. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to respond to your friendship by showing interest and not just calling on you when we get ready to close. We want to be fully engaged. And when you see things that you think we're doing, if we take an action, for example, that may affect the community, and we didn't go through a process to ask your opinion, call us on it. That's the way we'll learn. We'll overlook stuff. We just forget. And so call us on it. Our intention is to be fully engaged in our community. Reciprocal. We listen, and we hope we can call on you to listen to some of the things we've done. And so I'm very much interested in learning to know the town officials, the county officials, the regional leaders better, because we do want to see ourselves as very much invested in our hometown and our home community. So I wanted to say thank you for all you've done for us. The other is that on the staff, the support staff, hourly staff particularly, these folks work so hard. And I've had a chance recently to send out a note, hey, you fixed the heating when we were really cold, and thank you for doing it. You know, it's not fun to work on stuff when you're cold too and you're outside working. Or you shoveled all this snow around so we could get around the campus. What a great thing you did for us. And food service came in to make sure everybody ate. We have got to do a better job of acknowledging the dignity of every person on this campus.
Absolutely.
We really must. So whether it comes through board representation or some more institutional way is an issue. But all of us can show our respect and our appreciation for our colleagues by making sure that we let them know how much we appreciate their service, their work, and their friendship, and making sure we pay attention to each other. So I didn't want to miss those 2 points you alluded to, John.
Awesome. I think we have somebody in the back here. Yeah. Somebody has a microphone. Here we go.
I have but I don't think I need a microphone. My name's Bob
No,
Barlow.
you need it because it's hooked up to the live stream.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay, so it might
Yeah.
go through. My name's Bob Barlow. I was the Dean of Students here from 1977 till 1995. And I think these are very interesting topics, the curriculum and governance structure. But I think one of the things about both of those is they're going to take time to evolve and be put into place. And I'm more concerned about the immediate issue of marketing. And what are we doing that is different in marketing? Is there a written marketing plan? What will be our yield from this huge application pool? We know historically what the yield from an application pool has been, and therefore we also know that it declined over the years. So my question would be, where are we going to fall? It's great publicity that we've put out about the number of applications. However, the yield is where it really lies.
Yes.
And I started my college administrative career in admissions, and so I know that.
Yeah.
And I said, so at this point, I'd like to know, number one, is there a written marketing plan? Number two, is that written marketing plan available for people to look at or react to? And is there a short-range plan for this current year? And is there a long-range plan for future years? Because we will not be able to build the enrollment that we need without a marketing plan that works.
Absolutely. A couple of things. We've just hired a new marketing director. President Stone can talk about that. We do have an online social media service that's helping us that we can talk a little bit about. And we do have the Next Is Now campaign, which is really an articulation of our immediate goals and so forth. But most certainly there'll be a more comprehensive plan. So, going forward, obviously. And some of it has to do with this vision. You know, one of the things we talked a lot about as a board is we could have come up with a huge comprehensive marketing plan a couple months ago if we wanted to. We have resources, alumni, other people that could help us, professionals we could access. And then here we are, we're going through this visioning process. And what's this next class going to look like? Are we going to meet our fundraising goals? Are we going to, which could really seismically change what you thought your plan was 2 months ago. And so we sort of made a conscious decision to do an immediate short-term marketing plan for this year, if you will, as things are evolving and morphing really pretty tremendously, and getting new permanent staff on board, and so sound like it's a complete, comprehensive, stamped and sealed plan, because it's not, and purposefully so, I think. And then I think Stephen should probably respond about the thing. But President Stone, do you want to talk about the marketing?
There was a marketing study being done before the closing. I mean, it was in progress about the time of closing, and I think it was pretty much aborted by the closing itself, and frankly, it was not moving toward, I thought, resolution that really helped us with a marketing plan as such. It's still there. We're not ignoring it. We're trying to get the data from it. But what we've tried to do is to move toward getting our permanent staffing in so that we can start designing permanent plans. I mean, not permanent, but indefinite plans, such as marketing plans. And our new person in media relations and communications, marketing, and so forth, will be coming in a week from Monday. So we're really close to that. She has experience at Edelman's and other large concerns, including marketing and higher education for very prestigious schools like University of Chicago. So she's had a lot of good experience that really we think will really benefit us. So we will try to have something to report on that pretty soon. On the yield for the students, Monica, is there anything else to be said on a marketing plan? Is that?
No, I think that's absolutely accurate. We've been looking at money and students. We've been looking at
It's working. It's working. It's good.
We've been looking at money and students, as President Stone has said. So that's absolutely what we are focused on instead of looking at a long-range marketing plan. We're looking at this year. We've made a lot of changes in some of our admissions materials to reflect all of the changes that we've got going on, but we haven't initiated a big project to rebrand or remarket the college in a different way than we have. We had some pretty good marketing materials, and we're continuing to use them until such time that we need something new. And that's coming up fairly soon.
The next is now publications, if you've seen it, and they are online, are actually a really good, I think, prelude. It's a good first step to what you might be seeing. But anyway, President Stone.
Stephen Nape here will say a few words to you about what you can predict, if anything, about the number of applications. But I would point out that when he was here before and brought into class of, I guess, 2013, or that fall of 2013, the first-year students, that with significantly fewer applications generated by the college, not names bought from a consultant service or anything, but with a smaller pool of applicants, he brought in a class of 197. So that's fairly recent history. So Stephen has a lot of experience that might help him to give you a little better prediction of what to make of it. I know I've always tried to say, and almost any time we give the number, we say, we're bragging about a record number of applications. And I follow that by saying, who knows what that means anymore? Because you have multiple applications. People do it on computer. We don't know until they come here really, but certainly until deposits are done. We don't know how many will show up, do we? And so that's how we know our yields, is after the fact. And so what we're really trying to do, though, is to celebrate the fact that we're higher rather than lower. I do celebrate it. And it means that we have them in the siphon, in the big pool of the siphon, right now a record number, and it gives us at least a chance to work more names than we ever have had, and that's good. Stephen, will you say more about what might be predicted about the applications?
Certainly. Bob, where are you? Mm-hmm. Thank you, first of all, for everything you did this summer. I don't know if everybody knows, but Bob was a staple in the admissions office calling students and parents all summer for us, and very much appreciated. In terms of yield, I think Phil hit the highlights. We have a big applicant pool, and the reality is there is no history to base next year on because there's been nothing like this in the college's history and in higher ed history, quite honestly. But there are a lot of indicators you can look at in the admit pool that predict higher or lower yield. And it's the confluence of all of them that end up with your final yield number. But we look at where students come from, if they come from feeder high schools, how many contacts they've had with the college, if they've visited campus, if they're what we call self-initiates, meaning they found us rather than we beat them into submission to apply. And there's always a mix of all of those. And what I would say is in the applicant pool right now, we have a mix that feels favorable to me. As Phil said, I don't think anyone's prepared to say we're going to have 213 students. I'm not. But the goal long-term would be 250 students a year, each and every year. And I think our goal is to get there as quickly and responsibly as we can. And I think we're set up to do that. If I could put a number out there that I would hope for, it would be in the 200 range, to be honest. I think that's doable. It's in the realm of historic yields for us on the low end of what you would remember. And it's consistent with what we see in state and with our competitors. But again, it's too early to actually make that call.
Is there any history that shows that when a school's enrollment is struggling, the yield is lower because people feel that they can apply to the school as a backup school? That's what I'm worried about. If we have 1,300 applicants, my question is, how many of these people is Briar their first choice and the place they're going to go? And how many people are applying here because they feel, well, I can get in there?
Okay.
Sure.
Let me repeat the question because they wouldn't have heard it. It's basically, do we have any indication of how many of these applicants has Sweetbriar down as their first choice? Do we have any indication of how gung-ho they are about Sweetbriar in particular? Yeah.
Sure. A couple responses to that. The source of the application is an important indicator to us of where we fall on the list. And what we've seen this year, I would argue, is probably one of the most dramatic shifts from the common application to the Sweetbriar application. This year, 15% of our applicant pool right now is coming from the common application. In previous years, it's been 55 to 60%. So what that means is people are going to our application and submitting it, I would argue, because they're interested in us. So that's an indicator. It's not the end of the story, it's an indicator. When students fill out their financial aid paperwork, the FAFSA, they can list schools to send it to, and it's kind of a known data point in this line of work that where you're listed on the FAFSA is a very good indicator of if you're top of mind or if you're the last school that has been thought of when they're filling that out. We're just starting to collect those. We will look at them, and that will give us another indicator to look at. And then you have all kinds of anecdotal information. People putting pictures of themselves on Facebook with their accept letter. It's got to be a good sign. Maybe I should end on that.
Thank you. We have a question in the back. Yes, ma'am. Oh, state your name.
Sorry. Angela Carpita, class of 99. Given our past experience of what I could politely term as touch and go with the topic of race relations, and given our current state of just trying to soar forward and not look back, and really we don't have as much room for negative press, could you please give me a ballpark number on maybe the Chinese applicants that the news says maybe we're talking to, or just any kind of ballpark figure? One, that's my first part of the question. Second part of the question is, if that is taking shape, and I think it could be wonderful, what structures will be in place on campus for those students to feel welcomed and assimilated and cared for? What structures will be in place for the students, the traditional American students, to get excited about multiculturalism, and what structures will be there for the faculty?
Great questions. But just first of all, I'm not sure what you meant by touch and go race relations, but without going into whatever it may be, I can say President Stone has stated unequivocally when he first got on campus that every single person will be respected, and that we are celebrating diversity, because you can't be a generator of women leaders and not understand that this world, this global environment we're in, is about celebrating diversity. And so thank you very much for your question. I want to turn it over to President Stone, who's most likely going to kick it to Nancy Ellen. But I will say, as somebody gets a mic to Nancy Ellen, right now we have 0.05 international students on campus. So our peers, the Sarah Lawrences, Bryn Mars of the world, you're talking about 24% international students, 13% international students, 9% international students. So we're lagging way behind, to the extent that every now and then I run into somebody who says, I heard you're getting international students. Are we going to be turned into an international school? First of all, we got so far to go before if that was our objective, we got a very long way to go. And secondly, that is a whole different kind of academic environment. We would have to have special courses and special, and so we haven't done this visioning yet. Goodness knows where we'll end up. But I can say that is not, being an international school is not an objective, only because it means radically changing what your current objective is to set up your structure to be an international school. So we've got so far to go before we're even up in the same level with our peers on international students. As to the specifics, Nancy Ellen.
Thank you. I just want to give you an overview. We are starting from scratch, basically. We have one international student this year who's a 4-year. She will graduate this May. And so if we look back at our history, Sweetbriar's history, there were a number of international students on our campus in the 80s and 90s, up to 40 students a year. So this is not a new thing to encourage international students to come to Sweetbriar College. This is just an effort that we're starting now because we only have one student this year, and as Chairman Tomlinson said over here, our other peer colleges are so far ahead of us. Hollins has 5.9% international students, Mount Holyoke 24%, Smith College 15%, Randolph College 10.2%. And so we only have to go up. As to the rest of the question, we are looking for students in a strategic way this year for financial and other reasons. We are looking for high-quality students who have the academics, who speak English, and we're advised to look in strategic locations and look strategically because we don't have the ability to go out and hire people to do this for us. No upfront costs. And we've been pretty successful. We've talked to alumni. I want you to know that we have talked to alumni and parents who have connections in international recruitment, and we have gotten leads from them. And one of the leads that we have gotten from an alumna who came to me in July is this connection with China. And another one that I have looked at, I got from another a friend of the college for India, and so there are, there's several countries we're looking at. You asked about what we're going to be doing on campus. Kelly Kraftmeyer is the Dean of Students, Co-Curricular Life. Her office, in conjunction with the Dean Pam DeWeese, will be working on how the students will be served. One of the things that Dean DeWeese has done has been to post a job for the international office here. There will be someone that will be hired who has a lot of experience, and if you want to add anything to that. But there will be a lot of preparation that will go into this. We don't know yet how many foreign students, international students we will have next year, and so the preparation will be commensurate with the number of students that we have.
One thing that's interesting is that in addition to these efforts, and I want to stress how deliberate and methodical Nancy Ellen and the other staff's efforts have been, because they understand this is not something we're going into naively. Hey, all international students, just come on over. I mean, because they have to be supported culturally, and you want them to succeed. And we want every student that comes to Sweetbriar to succeed, and so we understand what that may mean. And so this is not something we're doing in an irresponsible fashion at all. It's very, very methodical. But one thing I think is very interesting is, in addition to these methodical efforts you're hearing from Nancy Ellen, is that overall our international applications are up from prior years. Just of people hearing about Sweetbriar, just unilaterally applying to Sweetbriar, which is fascinating. I'm sorry.
I wanted to add a note that I think ought to cheer you in terms of the interest of the Chinese group we're working with. They're making it very clear. They're not looking to convert Sweetbriar into a Chinese enclave or an international enclave. They want a Sweetbriar experience. They've been reading about us. They've been studying the liberal arts curriculum. I mean, they've been finding out about it. They want a liberal arts degree, and they want to focus on women in leadership. Well, it's not done anywhere in the world better than it's done at Sweetbriar, and I'm glad they know it, and we ought to brag about it too. So I'm glad for the reasons they're interested in us, And so what they're trying to do is to find a place for liberal arts education, not to form an enclave that has them just kind of operating as a little colony on our campus, but to be fully integrated into the Sweet Briar experience the way many of you can remember it when you had an international presence here years ago and assimilated them. They assimilated quite well into the student body. But I think it's a real compliment to Sweet Briar that they want what we have, not to change us into something else.
Yes. Thank you. My name is Beth Ike. I'm class of 96. I appreciate the general saying about directing ourselves by our stars and not by our wake, but I have a transparency question. And I love to hear that the bylaws are going to be posted on the web. I'm curious if the board intends to post their minutes as well. And I'm wondering about audited financial statements for 2014 and 15.
Audited financial statements, yes. The audit, yes. The audit's already public anyway.
Audited will be, there'll be a tag on the website.
Right. Those are going to be, in any event, the bylaws, as we talked about. Minutes, no, because they do contain some things that are not public, personnel type issues, other type things. But what we do is we have, the president gives a statement of board action after every board meeting, and it's on the website, and then usually I post it on every Facebook page that is related to Sweet Briar that I can find, just so people know. And that is basically what we do, is go down our action items or serious issues of discussion and provide that anyway. And as you know, as you've been probably on other boards, minutes tend to be real cryptic, you know. Motion to do such and such, seconded by so-and-so, discussion was had, it passed 8-2. And you're like, what discussion was had? And so I think that it's actually more meaningful for the president or the chair to do some sort of a statement of board activity where you sort of explain what that was and don't lead it to guessing. So I think actually it's going to be more transparent than just posting these cryptic minutes. Yeah. Yes.
With that,
We got to have you on microphone.
With that, we are able to go to like the Chamber of Commerce or to the Amherst County Board of Supervisors. Is there in any foreseeable future that we could come and sit and, you know, other than closed session where you have sensitive issues, that we could, like, I want to be all on top of this because every single day I fought and I'm not going to stop. So I need to know that it's handled properly.
Sure. A couple things. You know, first of all, today we had the Alumni Alliance come and give a report and have dialogue, and we're going to do that again, like I said, with the faculty. It's not really something where I think we would be open to having people come and just sit in our board meetings, because it would be like, okay, well, now you need to leave. Okay, you can come back in. Well, now you need to leave, and now you can come back in. I mean, it's that intensive. And I would suggest that this type of engagement, frankly, gives you more of what you want. Even if we were to let you in, you wouldn't be able to participate. I mean, it's not like we're going to say, so what do you think about what we're doing? You're not on the board. And so this, I would pose, is much more meaningful engagement. And that's why I said, you know, let's discuss this, obviously, as we go forward with our governance documents and things and our visioning, what our roles are going to be. I mean, I really want you all, as our very valued stakeholders, to think, is this more meaningful engagement, more transparency than it would be if we just let you come in and then had executive session about the stuff we wanted to talk about. And don't forget, that was one of the criticisms, and I'm not going to weigh in on, you know, valid or not valid, but one of the serious criticisms about what happened before was that so much was going on in among the executive committee that arguably, again, I have no firsthand knowledge, I wasn't there, but the rumor had it that even board members weren't being fully engaged. And so what can you do about your structure that actually is providing engagement and transparency and not just giving the appearance? I suggest that giving people the appearance that they have some sort of power when it's, okay, please leave the room while we vote and discuss, is really kind of pandering. I mean, I hate to, and a lot of organizations do it, by the way. We'll just give them a seat and they'll be, and then we really won't include them on all the good stuff we'll be talking about. So, I mean, I think we need to have a discussion about what is real engagement.
Maybe
Yeah.
one
Sure,
last,
yeah.
let me add. One of the things we might try to do in response to your concern, I think it's a legitimate one, is that when I came here, the first business day I was here, remember I came on July 4th weekend, the first business day was to call for a town assembly or college assembly, and everyone came, every hourly employees, staff, faculty, everybody came. Never seen me before, had to look me over, that was one thing to do. But basically for me to introduce myself and say what I thought we'd be doing. And we talked about how we were going to get this done, and we were going to do it with joy. We weren't going to have any long faces, and we've kept our word, haven't we? We've been having fun. Yeah, we've been having a lot of fun. And then it dawned on me as we were rushing through the semester and approaching the Christmas break that I hadn't done it again. I mean, it's just busyness. And I said, that was appreciated. I'll offer it again. So at the beginning of the second semester, as soon as Mary Pope let me come home from the road trips, I asked for another one, and it was even hard to schedule because some faculty couldn't get there because they had classes and so forth, but we did another one for the faculty. What I'd be open to, and I'd be glad to check with the faculty and students and everybody and make sure they're comfortable with it. I think they'd love to have everybody come, is to throw that open too for the whole community of people who are in the general area and make you aware that I'm doing it. So that would be another place where you could come and hear current information. I'm really anxious to do it. I really applaud what Teresa has done today to set up a town hall meeting. It was her idea. I think it's valuable. You obviously appreciate it or you wouldn't be here. And I think we're going to do more of that. What we're finding is you want current information. And we're going to find more ways to try to provide it. We've been so busy that I think we just thought you wouldn't insist on it, but you're entitled to it, and we ought to do it. It is a priority, and we're going to do it.
And the state of the college. Yeah. What a wonderful thing, and it should be regular. And so we want to get in the habit of doing these things because if you create a culture of engagement, people demand it regularly. Not just when you're doing your 10-year visioning process, but every day. And you're in the habit of providing it. Yes, ma'am.
Green. Hello. I am Hannah Lott. I'm the head field hockey coach here, also faculty. And I think where some of this governance stuff and people having open meetings and having a seat at the table really comes from is we are scared. We just all came from this. And we do appreciate everything that you are doing to keep it open. But I do think there is a real demand that we would love to have a staff seat, a faculty seat, someone from Amherst. It's just in this transition until we do have that culture or until we do trust the governance that is set up that we each have a seat at the table that you have invited us to.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And one other thing that's interesting, too, that I want everybody to think about, because we discussed it early on as we sent the governance committee to consider, don't forget that if you are, and I'm just going to pick Amherst because you said Amherst, if Amherst sends, let's just say a city councilor to sit on the board, while that counselor is sitting on the board, he or she, their duty is to sweep Briar. All right? So if they're there representing a constituency and a decision comes up which makes them breach their duty to Amherst but fulfill their duty to sweep Briar, they better be fulfilling their duty to sweep Briar and breaching their duty to Amherst. And the same thing, by the way, for the Alumni Alliance. So you're there, you're representing the Alumni Alliance. I'm here, I'm fighting for all those folks just like me. And then a decision comes down the pike and it says, you got a duty to sweep Briar. And you think, oh, well, I'm supposed to be representing all these, but no, ma'am. You're representing Sweetbriar right now. And so how do you wear two hats when you're a fiduciary for a constituency? For instance, let's just say, and it's something I went through at the city in Columbus, you're a staff representative, and an issue comes up related to the pension, and you have a decision to fulfill long-term commitments, but perhaps not do as good for new people that are coming on board because life expectancies are longer and so forth. So you got a decision right there that you're going to fulfill duty for older folks, long-time serving folks, but the new folks are going to get the short end of the stick. And you're a staff person. And you may fall into one of those categories or not. Your duty's to the college, not to any of those people you're representing. And that's a tough thing to think about. Yes?
on that, I just want to put out there as well that I think everybody's goal right now is for the college. We turned down jobs, we've left other jobs. This is on our mind 100%. Faculty has given up our benefits, our retirement benefits.
Yes.
So that is something that we were like, hey, everyone asked and said, this is the best for the college. We are willing to do it. And that goes to building a culture that we want and putting the goals and the visions that you're in that process of right now and putting that out there and getting us all on that same page. I know that's happening at the faculty level and at the department level, but to see that and get us all on the same page that every decision we make is for the good of the college, and if we all have that mindset, then we're here and we're at the table.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes. All right, we've got Katie here. We need a mic.
Be very careful. I understand conflicts of interest. Sure. I'm a business major, so I understand organizational structures well. But in terms of what is the Sweetbriar way for a board and different things like that, amongst the students and the faculty, I know as student government president, I sit on the faculty grants committee. And sometimes my professors come up in there, and I don't get particularly excited if something happens in business and I get a vote on that. That's never considered. What do I represent? So I honestly, being the student government president last year and being it this year again, has put me into an opportune moment to ask what is the conflict of interest for a student not to be on the board and not to be at the table when big decisions are made.
Sure.
Because it seems very important this moment and going forward when you're voting on them even tomorrow, what is the role of the board? Is there going to be any discussion after the bylaws are published online? And if so, how long is it going to take? I don't think time is an issue based on Sweetbriar Way.
Yeah, I would say,
just
yeah, it's
a
actually,
question.
and that's such a good question because a conflict of interest is a very specific thing. It's not just that you're interested. Heck, we're all interested. You could be very interested in conservation easements, and I could be very interested in land development, but we have to come up with a land management plan. Now, that's just a generalized interest. Now, if I own property that I'm talking about selling or leasing to the college, there you got a pecuniary conflict of interest. So there are two different things, and the one, when I was referring to an elected official from Amherst, for instance, took an oath. She's going to represent Amherst, and then they're there taking an oath, they're going to represent Sweetbriar, and if something came up. Same thing with a student, yes, you're not being paid by the college, but are you there as a representative of the student government or a representative of the Alumni Association? I'm an alumni. I'm an alumna of the college, right? So I have particular interests, but I'm there representing Sweetbriar. I didn't come to represent a constituency. And so that's, it's a distinction we are simply discussing. If you come as a representative of an organization, which hat are you wearing?
Well, my follow-up question is just, then why is the head of the Alumni Association on the board?
It's not. They are not.
Thank you.
They're not.
Well, why are they included in meetings that the student government would not be?
No, well, like you appeared today. The question is, why do we have an Alumni Alliance representative on the board? We don't. We have a board member who is head of the alumni committee, but she does not sit on the governance board of the alumni. And just like you appeared today with another officer to address the board, the Alumni Alliance appeared with their leadership today to address the board. The Faculty Executive Committee appeared today. So, yeah,
It might be helpful,
yeah.
Teresa, if we said that Teresa doesn't want to be understood to say this has already been judged.
No.
It is to just give you one reason to be thinking about another issue that has to be decided. There will be some pros that haven't been developed here today. There will be some cons
Yeah.
that need to be developed here. And what we are inviting is that if you send an email or do the discussion, we'll get it out there. But we
Yeah.
probably don't want to spend a lot more time on it here,
Yeah.
but except to say it's obvious you have a lot of interest in it.
Yeah.
And you want to have some conversation about why that's not a full answer to your interest. And so
Absolutely
we'll
right.
keep looking at it.
We want to get it right, not easy. That's the point. It would be easy to get it easy. We want to get it right. Yes, ma'am, right behind you, Georgie.
My name is Jessica Lesby. I'm a current junior here. My question goes back to students, and I'm really excited that we have all these applicants this year. But I know we've had a problem keeping students for all 4 years, and I was just wondering what we are planning on doing for it to improve that in the future.
Great, wonderful.
We fixed the food and changed the food. That was good, wasn't it? Look, we're trying really hard to make sure that you as students feel the commitment of this college to you. That is, that you're heard better. We're glad to have Katie come in and talk about position on the board and report to the board today with Catherine. I'm trying to make sure I'm more accessible as president, so if you have things you want to ask me, you ask me. I moved from an upstairs suite down to the downstairs area, and we waved each other through the window there so we see each other. Go to the dining hall and sit down with you and ask about things, and you tell me what you're thinking. And I'm trying to support your activities, anything from sports to the ballet, or to the dance, to everything else you're doing. And have Sweet Briar House and all those things. So we're trying, and it's just a personal testimony of it, but we're trying all across the campus, really, to make sure we show such friendship and support for you that you are reinforced in your strong preference to stay at Sweet Briar College. Those of you who stay love it so much. You're the best testimonials we have to your colleagues who are thinking about leaving. A little test we had, not a little test, it's a big test. We need to celebrate success. You know that? When we talk about having a record number of applications, even before we start talking about punching holes in the numbers, we ought to celebrate it. It's up instead of down. I mean, that's a celebration. One of the celebrations, and one of the things we're doing is we dig out of a hole this year. I said we won't be able to compare ourselves with where we wish we were if it hadn't been this closure thing. We grade ourselves by how quickly we're coming out of a hole, and I'm telling you, we're leaping out. All right, so another one is that we had a higher student enrollment, full-time student enrollment at Sweet Briar College in the spring semester than we did in the fall semester. I can't find any history of that at Sweet Briar College, and it happens nowhere else either. That means more people came in than left, and the ones who left, the ones I'm familiar with, and I've asked about it, not one student that we're aware of said it just wasn't a good fit. I just don't like Sweet Briar. Or Sweet Briar's changed with the closure effort. I just don't want to be here. Not one. 31 came in spring semester. 31 new students came in. That is 20 by transfer who had been here before and said they wanted to come home again, had to go to some trouble to come back, and 11 who had never been here before and said, I want to come in the spring semester. That's wonderful. We lost some by medical reasons, academic reasons. That'll always happen in college. You do have to make grades, and that kind of thing, or financial reasons. But think what a statement that makes about what's going on at Sweet Briar now in terms of this tone. We are working very deliberately at it. Faculty is doing everything it can to make sure this is a good year for all of you, the students. I really think that's happening. I think you're having a great experience. We tried to make sure all the sports teams got kicked back into gear. We're trying to expand the sports selections by adding a couple sports in the years ahead. We are trying to make sure that students experience Sweet Briar the way it should be experienced, fully and with a lot of creativity and a lot of energy. So when you see things that would help us do it better and make it a better experience for you, all you got to do is tell us. We'll try to do it. Yeah. But I think right now the morale's good enough. We're seeing really good response to it. And that ought to affect our retention rate considerably.
And the students have taken ownership of making sure other students feel comfortable here and feel like this is their place. And I think that you're to be commended for that. And I think that is making a real difference from all that we hear anecdotally, that the students are really bonding and mentoring and leading one another through any difficult times. And I want to commend the administration, President Stone, Stephen, and others in admission. They're really taking time to make sure these applicants that we accept are ones that have a high likelihood of being successful here and enjoying their Sweet Briar experience, and not just, hey, everybody, come on in. We've got one last question, and so I'd like to, if there's somebody who hasn't had a question thus far. One last question? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jen Staten. I wanted to thank you, first off, for your comments about work days. I can completely understand that it probably sounded terrifying. I think that Steve Bailey felt the same way. As like I was one of the co-chairs, and I appreciate that we got the opportunity to come and to do that. I'm slightly concerned that it is not going to be an alumna-driven thing in the future. And I think that it's a contact through the college. I understand that we need to be working with the alumni house, but as one of the chairs, it was disappointing to hear that it won't be nearly as alumna-driven as it was last year. And so I just wanted to see if I misunderstood that, or what, because it sounds like that you guys thought it was successful, but then we get, sort of mixed messages about it.
I think I can say wildly successful, we thought it was, and we want to keep it going, most certainly. And in fact, when we spoke today with the Alumni Alliance, absolutely. I think maybe what you may be sensing is that as we try to get, and we had a discussion about this today too, we have this fabulous Alumni Alliance with its own leadership. Where does it dock? Where does it dock? Does it dock with the board? Well, we're part-time. We're not here. I mean, we can't administer this incredible organization of volunteers. It has to dock with alumni relations. And so, but at the same time, we're very cognizant of history and frankly what goes on in other colleges, where a lot of times that door can get jammed pretty quickly and they thank you for calling and then that's it. So I think we're actually very cognizant. I don't see it being taken over. It may be trying to coordinate it from a staff and support it from a staff perspective so it's optimally it's optimal every single time instead of just catch as catch can, hope you have some place to sleep. So the new director of alumni, did you want to say something, or who? I'm sorry, KP in the back, yeah. You nailed it. Oh.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Teresa, you nailed it.
Okay.
It's not that the alumni will not be, and the Alliance membership won't be involved. They actually will be highly involved. The difference is there was no alumni relations and development. There was no staff last year. Remember that? In that department. And so thanks to people like Jen who really stepped in and coordinated with Steve Bailey, a staffing person will do some of the coordinating side, but the execution will actually be part as everything, because we, as you know, in the alumni relations, as well as all the other departments on campus, are half the staff and faculty that we're used to being.
Jen, if you'll promise to be the commanding general again, we will not let structures get in your way, I promise you. I saw you at work.
I think we're spending the summer in Seattle, so I don't even know how I'm going to be here for 2 weeks in May. I've already told DJ that I'm on board for the 2 weeks in May, but I don't know that I can be here.
I want all board members to raise their hand again like this. All board members, raise your hand like this. These are the folks, if you have last remaining questions or just an idea that you were too shy to shout out, hunt these people down. We thank you for your time this evening. President Stone, thank you for your tremendous leadership. And let's give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you all. Good evening.